Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's lovely to see you all in such a beautiful venue. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for letting us use this fantastic venue, organising such lovely food and drinks. Thank you. So I just wanted to welcome everybody to this, which is our second kind of graduating group, I could say, of mentees from the programme at WIA. My name is Triani. I'm the chair of Women in Architecture. And it's really, really good to have you here through the extraordinary work that's been done by Tania, Karen, and Anna in building up some great networks. And it's very much a celebration of the way in which mentors provide support, but also the exchange that both have for each other. And in terms of long-term and short-term building support that needs. So I just really want to congratulate the WIA team that have organised it. It's been an extraordinary amount of work. And I also want to thank all the panelists for being here and contributing to what I'm sure will be a fantastic conversation. And I would like to welcome other people who haven't registered to be mentees to think about joining us next year, because thankfully Tania said that she will lead it for another year. So yeah, I'm really thrilled that she's able to do that. But thank you very much for that.
Like that's all the mentees.
Yes, more mentors and more support. So male and female mentors as well. So if you can lure anybody else in on this. I was just saying that in my life I had two significant mentors, one female and one male, and I could say that both of them equally constructed me in terms of my identity. So just to kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, thank you very much for all your hard work and congratulations to the mentees. I hope you have a great experience.
To Hazel, who's our wonderful host and sponsor for the evening.
So much. Hi, I'm Hazel. I'm the director of Curio, bespoke agency, born out of frustration of the industry. We focus on placing females into senior leadership roles, that I set up a year and a half ago. Frustrated by agencies, which was so by doing the same pattern of managing directors saying I live women in architecture. I remember just before COVID, there was an AJ 100 event and there was in a room for 500 women. I thought, they're all here. And what was the point of difference? And so I sat back and thought I was part of the problem with agency life, relying on CVs that come through the inbox. Typically were men, and we find that women at a certain age have different agendas. They have kids to worry about, husbands, cats, dogs, you name it. And it's ourselves left in many occasions. So last year, I dealt with over 70% roles, over 70% of the leadership roles, and big quality, it was about 72 points. Something percent of that were appointed by female leaders, not because they were female, because they were the best person for the job, and because we gave these women time, listened to them, found them, and we're continuing to do that. And I was sort of thinking about this mentoring event. There is a point I'm going to get to. But I think women are different, and I was listening to something recently where I think as women we are perhaps tired of being told what we should do or could be doing. There's so much advice out there, and I think women now we need our cheerleaders to support us when we walk through the fire in those real hard moments, and we need those supporters to just be there and celebrate. And so I think this mentoring program is a lot about that. And being a mentor this year, I've seen my mentee struggle, and it's been hard not being from London, trying to secure work and seeing that pain, but going through with her. And so I was saying, it's not you, keep your head up high. And she has secured some amazing things, and we're going to keep going with it. So thank you to Tania for this incredible, and Karen and Anna for the WIA. It's incredible. Thank you for speakers. Welcome to what is essentially my office. I hope I'm going to be listening. Come and see me anytime. There will be drinks afterwards, so please head down and there will be bar and DJ that opens. It's happy hour and it's party house and house today. And there's also a rooftop if you want to explore the house as well later. So thank you so much and I hope you enjoyed the talk.
Yeah, what a wonderful venue. So lovely. So without further ado, I want to dive into this juicy topic that we've established for tonight. And really, I mean, we wanted to celebrate the fact that we've done 6 months worth of mentoring and menteeing, and it's been amazing. Like, I've obviously seen a small portion of it, and the feedback I've been receiving and what I've been seeing and hearing, there's been a real momentum that's been building, which I'm super proud of, and it's all down to those involved in the programme. And it's Karen and I get the privilege of running it, but we get to see all these amazing people involved who are thriving, which is amazing. So in terms of this evening, we wanted to really throw in this challenging topic and showcase some of the incredible mentors and mentees that we've had in the programme, so that we can celebrate you, and so that we can encourage more to get involved in next year's programme, and so that we can absolutely abolish this idea that if you need or want a mentor, that there's some kind of weakness associated with that, because that's complete and utter rubbish. And I've heard this on a few occasions, and I think we've got to really support each other and say, you know what, when you meet the women and the men in this room, you understand that there's a real community there that can support. So I guess my intro to this being a big topic is that we can start these big topics in small rooms, and if each and every one of us take some of these sparks that fly, which I know will fly from this conversation and from what happens when we have a drink afterwards. If we take these sparks from this small space and multiply that out, and take that back to your project team, take that back to your office, start challenging some things, start knowing that you can say something if you've got the backing of everyone in this room and every other woman in architecture, quite frankly. So I think there is this real community that we can build, and it can start quite small. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first panelist, Abbas, who is larger than life in every respect, and many of you might know her work on LinkedIn, because that's where I definitely started to know her. And this is the first time I met her in person, which is the way we are working these days. So I will let you introduce yourself, but obviously you're an architect who's moved into a different space now, but now you get to see architects from a completely different angle. So I'd love to hear about your story and your very unique viewpoint on where women in architecture are at this moment in time.
I think the first thing I need to say is I've never been an architect.
Oh, sorry.
And my background is actually, I did a degree in business. I've got a business degree with a specialist in marketing, and I kind of fell into construction PR, and that's kind of it. So I actually have never been an architect. I don't want to. I am quite proud of it. Just really into engineers. It's true. So I built a marketing consultant, and what I do is basically I set up my own business probably 3 years ago, and I market architects and engineers. I guess for me, I'm black. I grew up in the East End. I'm walking to some of the boardrooms of some of the top engineering practices and stuff like that, and I don't look or sound like most of the people where I'm there. So people tend to know who I am, which is good. But I guess it's that confidence of having come to go in and own your own kind of voice in your space and have that confidence. And I think, you know, we've all got so much to share. These practices, they really do need us, the architecture firms, the engineering firms. I think we've all got something we can offer. So for me, that's the kind of key point that we all kind of need to know and do. So I guess the questions were the key challenges that I see for women and people who have marginalised groups in architecture today. I mean, it's still traditionally male, they're dominated. You know, you can even look at functions like what I do in marketing, which, you know, lower levels tend to be female practices, but then as you go up the ranks, head ofs tend to be male, directors, CMOs, male. You know, there's an issue in there's an issue in architecture. Where are people my age? I'm 46 years old. There's not that many of us left. You look around practices and you're like, why have we all had to drop out, do our own thing or find something else? So for me, it's like, how do we kind of address those issues? And looking back over the past 3 years, you know, I went online when, you know, COVID struck. I just started my business literally the month before. And, you know, I'm a single mum with an 8-year-old. And you're kind of there going, actually going online was great for me because I like creating content. So that's why I'm on LinkedIn, right? But actually, a lot of the kind of senior level people in those large firms and things, you know, they're male, they've always done stuff in person. They can go out, they can drink, they can network, they can play golf. I can't do that. You know, I have to sit there and go, oh no, like I did yesterday when I got a text from my friends going, your son says he's staying with us tomorrow night. It's like, oh no, I'm not arranged for childcare. So that's exactly what happens. I just kind of think, you know, that's the kind of stuff we're all juggling, and I just don't think people realise, or, you know, that's valuable what we're all doing. So I think making it a level playing field, making it that you can work online, you know, and not everybody has to come back into the office like some practices are doing now, you know, and I think it's that whole thing of making it more inclusive, being more flexible. I mean, the other thing about architecture as well is I rate you all because you studied for 7 years to be qualified. And I just think that's a huge amount of time, huge amount of cost. By the time you kind of had a life and kids, well, it's true, right? By the time you've done that, you're just like, and you don't make that much money. So yeah, that's another challenge. And I think there's got to be something that's got to be done around that, because that doesn't work for anybody, right? It's not a respected profession, and you don't get the kudos that you do deserve. And yeah, I've always been thinking about the whole losing women of a certain age, which is quite interesting as well. And then I think that the whole thing for the next gen, you know, you need role models from to see people who have made it to the top of these practices. I find it quite interesting that a lot of the females who I've seen who set up their own practices, they can be flexible, they can have inclusive hours, they can do, you know, like they can do all of that. So it's possible. So how come some of our larger firms and things like that aren't doing that? That's the question to ask. Yeah, and I think as well, there's this whole thing that people recruit themselves. So senior level people are recruiting people that look just like them, went to the same schools as them, sound like them, design like them. And I think that that's that whole kind of diversity and inclusivity piece is just not happening across the practices. And if we can find ways that we can kind of get that to work, because I think there's that whole thing of, you know, diversity, being more diverse, being more inclusive, including women in design, we'll get better buildings, we'll get better places that work for actual people rather than just look great in a magazine. And I think it's that kind of stuff that we need to start looking at as well. So I think as well, because I grew up in East London, I think architecture and construction probably was never a career that was actually on the agenda for my, you know, when I went to school. So I think as well, there's that whole thing of getting out to those types of areas and talking to people who are, you know, whose parents aren't rich enough just to kind of say you can go off and study architecture for 7 years. So yeah. Okay.
Thanks for sure. All right. Not an architect, but specialising in marketing. I would just love to know the challenges that you are brought in to help, and if there are instances where it's specifically a female architect, you're brought in to help improve visibility and improve the confidence to put the work out there.
I mean, to be honest, I probably am working with senior level leaders on like global kind of campaigns and things. But when I have had female people I'm working with, quite often, actually, I guess the best example I can use is my podcast. And I have a marketing podcast that I do. And I started that. And one of the reasons I started that was because I wanted to get more female voices. I know that they exist in practices, but they're never heard. So, like, you know, some of the best marketers I know are people like Dara Hearn from Make, who is phenomenal. I think Ken's great. Speak to Dara. I mean, she talks so fast, but she is one of the best people you're ever going to meet. But it's just like when you start talking to these women and you're like, nobody knows she exists. So, you know, I think how do we find ways to bring those women out and actually have them front of stage? Because it's like, you know, they do amazing work to kind of give their leaders the spotlight, but you're like, but you're brilliant. And I think a lot of that is we've all got to support each other in doing that, because and championing the female voices and getting them out there, which obviously on LinkedIn, they should get on LinkedIn. But actually, I mean, going on LinkedIn in the past 3 years, it's done tons for me. So, but it is, we've all got something to say, no matter what level you are. You know, sometimes I kind of think the best posts I do are observationally boring. It's literally like, this happened today, and that really annoyed me. And then I'll write about that on my LinkedIn post. So you can write whatever you feel like.
There is hope. So can I invite our next panelist now, Sophia Chang. Now you're a senior architect and you're specialising in healthcare, and it was never someone who could talk so passionately about being a mentor and about developing others. Sophia.
Thank you. Hi everybody, it's lovely to be here. So I'm Sophia. I was born and raised in Taiwan, and I moved to England when I was 10. So I sort of have my roots and my culture in Taiwan and an Asian community, but I very much spent my cognitive educational years in England, where I received sort of Western education. What that means is my mother moved with me along with my 2 sisters, and at home we are brought up with the upbringing of an Asian household. Now, it doesn't really matter, you know, sometimes the cultures are mixed up, but what it means is the cocktail of the, you know, the influences that I have had during childhood impacted me in a way that I was brought up to sort of believe that you are there to please people, you are to be obedient, you are to be compliant, we try not to upset anybody, we seek validation from others, and that's how you are a good girl. Now, when I went into university, that was one of the first challenges I think that really affected me, because growing up, I'm sure not just in an Asian community, I'm sure in any cultures, it just depends from family to family. You seek excellence when it comes to education, you seek excellence in anything you do. And if you don't quite achieve it, sometimes it's like, well, you didn't try hard enough. So when I went into university, it was very hard to juggle any sort of a healthy life balance. It was very much, if the crit didn't go well, you didn't spend enough hours, you slept too many hours, you didn't spend enough on your models, that sort of thing. So I think it was very much one of those things, was like, when is it too much that I'm putting in? And that was definitely one of the topics that I spent a long time sort of opening up with my mentee and just being like, you're struggling and I see you struggling, and it is because it's hard. It's not because we're not trying hard enough. And I think that was definitely one of the things that really resonated between the two of us. And I think growing up from that, going into work, what it meant was, because of the upbringing, I'm sure many of us sitting here would understand, if you're ever in a position that you don't want to upset anybody, you start to grow to be very aware of the emotions around you. You start to open yourself up and basically train yourself to become a bit of an empath. What it means is you literally absorb everything that's around you. You absorb everybody's emotions around you. You can suspect people's reactions and emotions around you. So when I went into work, and especially when I became an architect, I was in a very lucky position, to be fair, to be in an office where they put me on projects that were on site. So at one point in my career, quite young career at the time as well, when I just become an architect, I was running 3 jobs on site. I was dealing with 3 contractors. All 3 of those contractors were male. All 3 of those contractors were way older than me, and all 3 of them wanted information yesterday. So to be thrown into that position at a fairly young age, in a position where you think, oh my goodness, I cannot upset anybody, I'm disappointing them, what do I do, that sort of thing. I think was one of the toughest challenges that I've ever had to overcome in my young career life. And I think that's one of the things that women in architecture face on a daily basis, invisibly, behind curtains, not seen, not celebrated, and not comforted. And for me, the process of having to go through a personal development as well as a career development was one of the toughest things that I felt like I had to go through. To feel like I am not able to give them the information enough, not able to, actually not knowing what it is that they're asking of me, not feeling like I'm good enough. Where do I find this confidence to stand there and speak to a 60-year-old contractor that he has put his bloody rainwater pipes in the wrong place? Where do I find the drawer? And that was the problem. And I think one of the most rewarding things that I hope I have been able to speak to my mentee about is just the fact that you are okay to stand up for yourself. It is not wrong. I know you feel everything that you are feeling, and I know you are suspecting that, what am I to say to this and what about, that's okay. I know you feel it, but at the same time, protect yourself. We are not here to serve everybody else. We are here to do a good job whilst protecting ourselves as well. We cannot fall from an empty cup. So I think that's been one of the most rewarding things that I have been able to hopefully communicate with my mentee about, and also one of the things that I am continuously learning through my journey. And it's just one of the developments of figuring out, for me, the challenges anyway, is just where do I come up with this confidence? I don't know if any of you've experienced it, but when I was growing up, I thought confidence had to be earned. I thought I had to be accredited. I thought you had to be very much overqualified to feel like you can be confident. And it took me a very, very long time to realize that that is not where you find the confidence. The confidence is dead. Do you have the audacity to just go out there and be confident? Because you know what? Not generalizing anything. There's a lot of men out there who are confident, not necessarily because they know what they're doing, but because they don't know that they don't know what they're doing. And we are cursed with the knowledge that maybe we don't know 100% what we're doing, but tell it we know 85%. That is good enough. Some of them walking around knowing 40%, going, I'm doing great. And that's sort of the challenges that I think women in architecture are facing in the dark. But I think we're doing a damn good job. Wow.
I was listening to a TED talk that was talking about, it just reminded me what you're saying there about, girls behave a certain way, boys a certain way, and then it just carries on in your professional life. And it was I guess a lot of research has been done into how girls are brought up in a playground and how boys are brought up in a playground, obviously outside the playground. And there is this idea that boys are, you foster them to be as brave as possible, whereas girls, you try and protect them and all of this, and that how that plays out. So I definitely resonate with your story there. But also, just to pick up on your point there, the cultural differences that you have faced. And I'm wondering whether you, now that you've moved on from some of those contractors, and now you've matured a little bit more, so you can take it on head on with some of them, I'm sure. But in terms of some of the client, because you've had these different sensibilities about the environment that you're in and the emotions, like you say, do you think that you're able to treat clients differently, treat stakeholders differently than some of your other colleagues?
I think one of the points I actually wanted to raise, I think I can actually. So the struggles I had at the beginning, where I felt like I was feeling too much. Every single email that I was receiving, I was going, oh my God, I can't believe I haven't responded to that within the next 5 minutes. That sort of a thing. That emotional stimulation, overstimulation almost, is something that over time, I sort of had to learn how to shield myself, how to guard certain points, but simultaneously use those same emotions to hone that into becoming a strength. So I'm sure in many of our jobs, we have to have stakeholder engagement. Honestly, it's group work, it's teamwork. You've got project managers, you've got engineers, you've got QSs, you've got clients and all that sort of stuff. You're talking to people on a daily basis. But because of this emotional awareness that I was brought up to have, over-awareness, sometimes I would say, but because over time I've learned to hone it now, and where do I put the blinkers on? I am able to use the same emotions to actually try to cultivate a good relationship within my design team, within my project team, within my client team, and use that ability to hopefully create a working environment that I'm sure you're all, sometimes anybody can be your engineer, anybody can be your project manager, but if it's someone that you work well with, no problem seems a big enough problem. You can all solve it together. So I'm finding that the soft skills of emotional intelligence that people don't talk about is becoming the critical part, what I feel like is a success in my work, that I feel like I can enjoy the day that I'm working and enjoy the work that I'm doing. It is the fact that I can build and cultivate these relationships that very much used to be a challenge, and now I'm turning into a strength.
I love that. So now I'd like to invite Rupali Sharma-Patel. Now you are an architect, I get this one right, but you've moved to the other side, and you're now working with TfL. So I'd love to hear your story about starting as an architect and making the transition.
First of all, thank you. And I don't know how I can actually between that, but I'm going to try and Another thing I would say, I work in a heavily infrastructure-led transport environment where even to sort of prove yourself to be an architect or an architect, you need to just kind of put the wallpaper, and you have to constantly prove the value of architecture. So to be surrounded by architects and not have to justify my profession is a great place to be. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. So yeah, I started being an architect. That's what I do. I've got transport, love designing buildings, stations, the volume, scale, the complexity, everything. But it was just something I thrived in. But yeah, I've often been the only woman in the room. I've often been the only Asian person in the room. I've often been the only mum in the room. I've been the only one who can say I've got kids, I need to run off. But all of that has not been something that I feel is an obstacle to me. I've been surrounded by people who supported me. But the reason why I've been supported is because I come with evidence. I always come with this backpack of evidence to say, I know all this. That's why I'm here. I know all of this. I'm going to add value to you. Once they know that I'm going to add value, they'll accept me. But I have to come with evidence. I have to prepare. And I have to tell everything about myself in order to be accepted, to be given a place at the table. So I've never thought of that as an obstacle. It's something that I've just used in my process. And it's helped me because the more prep I've done, the more I've been able to be accepted, the more I've had to explain myself as. So I worked a lot in private practice. The project that I was working on for a long time didn't go as well. Working in sort of infrastructure, you always get projects stop and start. Constantly, there's nothing that you can see through. Sometimes it doesn't work through. Politics, governments, funding, all of that plays. So you manage stakeholders and you manage expectations of your team, and you become the sandwich in the middle, where you just know everything that you're going to have to solve it. So I think, you know what, I don't want to do this. I want to go and work on the client side and just understand what's happening so that I can make peace with myself that it's not because of something I'm doing here. So I started working in London Underground with TfL as part of the design team. We had an internal design team. And then I think I was talking to my mentee yesterday about it. Went from a really small architectural practice into this corporate organization. Just to know what to do. Like I knew how to navigate practice and knew how to do things in practice, but to navigate 27,000 people. Try to understand why things are done in a certain way was just something that I didn't know any about. So things that I've learned completely fell to the wayside and had to develop a new set of skills. I've worked in different parts of TfL, different types of client groups as an architect. The thing that I've learned is what I like is I love complexity. I love going and solving things and finding puzzles and trying to break things down to their singular point to oversolve it. Why I do it, I don't know, but what I think is useful as architectural skills that we have taught, we have learned, we have designed. You can bring all of that to any place and you will be accepted. I would now work in an operating business. And the reason why I keep sort of talking to you about this, this is the quest I have, you know, buildings are used by everybody. Everybody uses buildings, everybody uses the station. But 60,000 people use stations every day. Who makes the decision? Who decides? It's not the architects who decide. The decisions are made somewhere else. They're made in boardrooms where nobody is represented. There's only a rule culture that exists. There's no representation when this is made. And my question is, how do I go and influence those places that we have, places that people can use buggies safely, for instance, or wheelchairs can be accessed safely. People can live their lives normally without experiencing these barriers in the infrastructure. So I love being an architect. I would never leave being an architect. I think when I retire, I go back to become an architect. But right now, with this journey to understand how can I influence so that everybody gets a chance to be heard, everybody gets a chance to be valued, and everybody's opinion is heard. That's basically.
Just pick you up on a point there in terms of being accepted, because you mentioned that a number of times, and I understood this was read from our previous conversation as well, that you feel like it's as though you've really had to prove yourself over and over again. But you know, what is it? Is it sometimes that we do this to ourselves, that we feel like in order to walk into a room or to be invited to that table, that we need to have that backpack of evidence, like we just described, whether or not someone asks us to give us that, give the evidence or not. We kind of feel like we need all that with us that we can take in, just so we can kind of stand tall or just speak up or something along those lines?
It's a combination of quite a lot of things, I think. So maybe when I started out of my profession, it was before maternity leave was acceptable, flexible working was acceptable, and I had to prove myself all the time, say, I'm going to have kids, but I'm going to deliver the project, don't take me out of it. Things are, I hope, are slightly different now, but it's completely unacceptable, demanding flexible work. So in order to be asking for those things, you have to give evidence. The more I've now went through, maybe I've not been able to get up that process syndrome that I've carried through. I have to provide less evidence, but I still prepare myself in case somebody calls me up on it. I shouldn't be doing it, but it's habitual now. Probably I don't need to provide it. You're correct. I don't need to provide that evidence. I can stand up for myself and it's fine. I'm telling you because I'm saying that's correct. You should believe me. But I still want to get out of that piece of paper and say no. But yeah, because somebody else thought saying it. But yeah, I think it's more about finding that confidence, finding people who believe in you, who will sort of carry you, cheerleaders in you, people who are allies on the table. I'm sure you've been in sort of situations where you go in, you present something, and there are 10 people in the room. 7 people will probably not support you, but 3 people might, and that might carry the idea forward. It's finding those people, finding those allies, and finding people who can carry you through. So maybe you don't need that much evidence to go through it. The more people we find in these rooms, who will support us, and that's why we are here to find those people. The more likely we
So definitely, do you want to check that your microphone is working? Yeah. Excellent. So I have the pleasure of introducing Desi now. Desi and I know each other from Grimshaw days. And Desi is a force to be reckoned with on all things diversity and women. You're leading the Women in Architecture group within Grimshaw, and you've got so much passion there. But also you've just had a really good exposure to large-scale infrastructure projects, but also some really interesting education, cultural. You've had just such a mix of projects to be involved in. So it'd be great to hear your background story and where you see the challenges from your perspective.
I'm an architect, which after so many years of education, I can finally say it proudly without having to doubt and break any of the code of conduct. So yeah, I'm an architect finally. I've been born and raised in Bulgaria, but I've worked internationally, in UK, in Italy, and in Bulgaria as well. From a broad spectrum of projects, and animation, master planning, dedicated projects, public building, as well as large infrastructural projects. Very challenging, very different setups, in each of the places, and something that for me was quite important, which was something I very early came across was the language barrier, because when I was back home I was hardworking, the competition level was always different. We're a smaller country, it was very easy to be number 1 in high school. But coming here in the UK for my part 1, I quickly realized that the competition level is much higher. The diversity that all the students bring coming to study abroad is enormous, but it brings a challenge. And predominantly for me, it was due to the language barrier. It's something that was a very big insecurity in myself, to an extent even today, so almost 10 years now here. And I do believe that within our profession, that's something that a lot of the non-native speakers are experiencing it. But instead of being seen as an insecurity or something negative, it should be embraced, because the cultural value that brings along with the experience, the different heritage, and Sophia was mentioning the kind of cultural background is something very, very invaluable. Then coming into the profession and joining Grimshaw, it was a set of different challenges that like were in front of me, some of which were like due to like my personality, which was like all very hardworking, extremely focused into doing well into the daily job, and then forgetting like the other spectrum of like the profession, which now after that many years, I'm like very proud to say that it's like even more valuable, and this is like all the extracurricular activities, opportunities that like brings. However, not all offices have that. Depending on like the work environment, some of like it very much varies, and like not everyone has like the same level of like encouragement to participate in all sorts of like activities or initiatives within the office. However, we all tend to learn more through social interaction. And for me, like diving into how to help myself to break this insecurity of like the language barrier, but also grow professionally, was like joining the wider group that we have in the office for diversity and inclusion. Organizing all sorts of like talks, events within the office, and then slowly, like I build up more confidence to get into the Women Architecture group and be a co-chair a bit. So yeah, I think it very much, as I said, like something that like it is personal, but it also like depends on the work environment. And like talking about the communication, I think we, especially women, experience like that due to the fact that they are very often like undervalued, or like they have to prove themselves, as Rupali said, like the imposter syndrome of like, am I saying the right thing? Maybe like my opinion doesn't matter, like do I have the 100% knowledge, or like the 95% is like still good enough? It's something that like kind of shadow in us, and something that like is often neglected, as like, oh, I'll say, I'll comment on this presentation like next time that I get an opportunity. No, like if you have something to say, you should say it now, and you don't have to undervalue yourself. But that also goes along like something that I've noticed is like, for me, when like define boundary of how like the personal and like professional meet within the workplace in a large office in a heavily male dominant profession, it's quite challenging. I'm not the kind of person that like socialize very easily, like the typology of going on Friday at the pub is definitely not my cup of tea. So I was like, okay, how do I integrate better? How do I get the stronger connection with my line manager? How do I get heard? And how do I like actually challenge myself and check whether like what I wanted to say would be valuable? I think I'm still like finding where like I'm not, whereas that line of like not being too professional, but also like keep the friendliness within the office, because as we all see, like, well, 8 hours a day we're in the office, 8 hours a day we're at home. So kind of like it's a massive part of our daily lives, the work experience. So it's like finding like your setup. So that's in terms of visual, but like and my like professional perspective experience so far. Something that like looking forward and having a great opportunity to have my mentors here visiting and like having this wonderful program throughout the last couple of months. I started like questioning and like looking more into the future, like what is my career path going to be like? How do I get support? And yeah, mentoring is one great opportunity, and like I've done it both in-house in the office as well as like externally, and I think it's like invaluable. But I don't think in the industry we get enough clarity and transparency at what the opportunities there are, because I do strongly believe that like if you know what the next step is, and like you get enough role models, and like you draw your own path, then it's much easier to walk that way. While like still questioning even within the Grimshaw Women Architecture group, whether it's something that we should do, like we should challenge to be part of the wider industry. So that's become like enforced by RMBA. Is it something that again is like a compulsory curriculum like the gender pay gap reports, but then do all the specific parts of the companies like measure that? Do they like give such support, or is it on an individual level? We need more mentoring programs, but are we scared the word mentoring and like that like give like a more of a negative connotation of that you need extra support, and how to embrace this like old school mentality of like when you need a mentor, like you're not good enough. No, actually you're much stronger after like having these sessions and having that support.
So you made so many good points in there. I just wanted to draw on one there in terms of how you build connections with your team and your superiors outside of the office when it's not necessarily wanting to go to the pub, and I can completely relate to that. And maybe picking up on this later, because building connections with your team outside of the workplace is so essential, but it's tough because it's especially if you don't want to drink, or you don't want to be in the pub, or you don't want to do sport, or I think there's not as many ways, but we need to be finding more ways, and I think that's such a brilliant point that you've made that I'd love to pick on afterwards if we can. Yeah.
I'm still struggling with it, like
Yeah.
for different ways, but also it's like a two-way street. So even if you want to be like open and share, it very much depends on like your colleagues, your line managers, whether they are like open as well, and you like apart from like the standard effect in the house or weekend. So like go and tell my like yeah, you still want to go like to be first, to like in a way to like some, if you share that like you're doing something important, or like you're like going abroad somewhere, like to know that like that person cares about you, that's only shown like if they actually ask you afterwards. So yeah, that's more than how do we get there? How do we do the?
I do think we need more female leaders who show that that is the way, and that other women in teams want that sort of assurance and understanding and visibility. And I think that absolutely goes hand in hand with what we talked about there, with just greater visibility generally about how you can move through a practice, or how you can move through the industry and progress. And I do think we need probably more kind of market, like, opportunities where you showcase how women have done these different journeys, like different pathways, different little wiggles and squirms and twists and turns and all sorts of things, but that is all valid. But just to see it and know that it's possible, I think it's half the battle, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is like one of the strong points and objectives that we have like in the office is like showcasing these role models, because it is about the visibility, it is about the role model, but like in order for someone to become a role model, they need to be given like. So women and any underrepresented groups need to be given these high-profile projects that allow you to get the visibility, to become a role model, and then effectively grow it in your career. Because if you are not given the opportunity, then you can't eventually get like this slightly different route, slightly different personality to show how much more diverse like our profession can be.
Thank you so much. You've given us so many things to be thinking about there. So Andela, can I come to you now? So Andela is an absolute force to be reckoned with as well. Super talented architect. And I've had the absolute pleasure of seeing your journey throughout this mentoring program. You're about to start doing your part 3. You'll be given so much more responsibility. You've really come out of your shell. You've got so much to offer the world, and finally you're realizing it. So tell us a bit about your background and where you see some of the challenges right now. Thank you.
all the time. So my name's Andela. I came from Serbia to UK years ago when I finished my part 2. And I decided to look for a job for the first time in another country. I didn't know where to look for because I needed to find a job, but I needed to find a company willing to sponsor my visa and my staying in UK. So there's just a handful of companies willing to offer that, and there's even less that were looking to hire anyone. So I must have sent over 200 emails just to get an interview, and getting the job after that was just a dream come true. But then any of you that have gone through a similar thing, remember their first day and then all the challenges that came with getting that job on the first day. There's this language barrier, and then that we all speak about, the imposter syndrome that you develop, because not just at work, but like everywhere you are, in a store, and where you're food shopping, it's everywhere. So for me, I have to say that I have been very lucky to be in a company that allowed me to grow, and where I was judged only by my skill set and nothing else. I know that meeting many women in the mentoring program are struggling with their work environment. So even though I had to do that supported work, because of the sponsorship, it's always in the back of my mind that I have to do even harder, that I have to do even better. And what I was struggling with is how to ask for something and not to come across as an arrogant person. Where to know, what's the limit and what I deserve to have in the company. So the mentoring program helped me. It gave me a structure and really helped me to, understand my value again. When you move from another country, you kind of lose the value that you have in you. You question everything every day. And so with the mentoring program and just sharing the stories, I got that reassurance and the confidence that I needed just to go out there and just, not be afraid to ask for something that will get me to be better and to grow within the company. So after the mentoring program, I can, say that I have, I'm starting my part 3 in September. I never thought I was going to do that this year, and I was going to come to this point, and my annual review really couldn't have gone better. I will be given an opportunity to lead a smaller project, and this is just something that I never even thought that was going to happen a year ago. Coming with work, I just wanted to keep my head above the water, but it really helped me, and I really recommend it to anyone, because it is really going to be like outside work confident, like friend that you can confide in. And it will help you to get all your fears out that you have and just say everything out loud, and hearing that there's a lot of your colleagues that struggle with the same thing, just, will make you feel better, and you'll be able to make a plan together with someone that has more experience and just get what you deserve.
Maybe, sorry. It's like you were saying, the struggle wasn't just in the office, it is everywhere. You were moving around, and you've changed like where you're living and all these complications. So what advice would you give to somebody coming over now to London and starting where you were, and knowing the struggle they're about to go through, and you can't obviously take away all of those struggles, but what advice would you give to?
I would just say, remember the day when you decided to do that was a big step, and then everything that happened after that is even bigger. So if you could have done all those things, then you can do just even more. You just need to remember yourself from that day when you decided to take this.
And I recall having conversations with you about, moving country and doing all these amazing things. Some people, that's just a step too, like that's probably 10 steps too far. So the fact that you had made those bold moves, but then came into a place and thought, but I can't ask for this and I can't, it does seem extraordinary to others listening to it. But I guess where I'm trying to draw from is why did you feel as though you could make a bold move to London, but then not ask for certain things within your practice or within your...
I think after a certain time, just kind of lose the confidence you have, and I wasn't even aware that I will have an issue with a language barrier. But like day-to-day speak, everyone can do that. But coming in a work environment and just coming across with kind of growing up at the same time and having a first job and having an actual client that actually pay for what you're doing. It's so I pay. That you have to overcome, and over time I became more introvert and I was more quiet and I knew the answer to the question, but I just wouldn't dare to say them out loud. So with your help and with the mentoring program, I really did kind of break that shell. And I'm working on it and I want to work on it, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's like you're building a new person when you move to another country. So I need to build myself in UK.
We can't wait to see where this goes. So I'm conscious of time. We've done the first round. This was like the first round, but we're going to do another round in terms of just going through the panel again to really leave with something quite optimistic about where you see future opportunities to really forge new paths for women and people who are marginalised.
For me, I think the main opportunity is about, I guess, having allies and championing women. So if you see women who are, I guess, putting themselves down, which happens quite often, or I can't do this, and I think it's just being that cheerleader. And I think we can all do that as well as men as well. And I think for me, that's the kind of thing that will give people that boost, that we can do it.
Love that. Yes, good.
All right, okay. So for me, I think there's so many exciting opportunities. The fact that we're all sitting here is a good prime example already. For me, it's twofold. So first of all, having more women in the architecture already, I feel and I hope it's going to be an exponential growth, because, for example, I'm currently in a very lucky position where in my practice, I'm running a team of 6 female team. We're all female. And it's been a wonderful experience because the level of support that we're able to give each other has just been like, I don't want to say unmatched, but because we are all female, we understand the things that we want to say to each other. They will come to me and be like, Sophia, can I come half an hour later because I've got therapy in the morning? I'm like, oh my God, yes, go to therapy. Come whenever you need to. The doctor's appointments, or wanting to leave half an hour earlier because they want to have dinner with their partner because whatever, that kind of stuff. First of all, it's obviously we all work hard. It doesn't matter what gender you are. If you don't work hard, that's a completely different question. But because we all work incredibly hard in the team, we're able to just support each other in the sort of mental, emotional issues that we're able to completely tap straight into, and no more needs to be said. I was like, that's your matter. You don't need to tell me more about it. You go do your thing. We'll talk tomorrow morning. And I think that is a really exciting opportunity that I'm already seeing in the industry, and hope we'll see more. And the next part as well is because there are more women in architecture, I feel like we are starting to have a little bit more representation in the designs of the work that we are doing. Just this week, I've had a very funny sort of incident, literally within the same week, where I had ran into a little bit of a issue with my director, who had wasn't entirely happy that I was putting the color pink in my department. I was going to say we all have an element of pink here. Now, that's not to say pink has to be associated to women. That's just a color. But for me, I didn't even think about it. But he just came out and like, I don't know. It's just not my favorite.
Okay.
It's just not my favorite. I was like, is there a technical issue? Is there a light reflecting value issue? What's going on? You couldn't measure it. You couldn't say it. I opened up the discussion with my teammates, and they were like, "You've got to be kidding me!" Everybody. But then suddenly there was a discussion of, just without going into too much detail, the department I was putting it into was the ultrasound department. Now, I didn't think much about that. I just thought we have a wayfinding system. There's a color for every department. There's pink, blue, green, orange. Ultrasound just happened to be pink. But then suddenly we got to think, oh, hold on. Statistically speaking, you probably get more numbers of women in ultrasound scanning for babies. And then suddenly we thought, okay, is it appropriate to put pink in ultrasound because it's to do with maternity, or is it inappropriate to put pink in ultrasound because it's to do with maternity? And the discussion we had lasted for literally 2 whole days. But the result of it isn't important. It's just the fact that we were able to talk about the designs and the choices that we were making for women as part of our input in architecture. I thought was really exciting.
Also, just a little bit worried about an all female team also sounds a little bit scary to me. Sorry. It's a long run.
Yeah, from my point of view, I think something that was mentioned earlier was around the cost of education. The years that we put into around education, that you come out of about 7 years and then you still have to constantly improve yourself and constantly go back and keep coming up with the same kind of barriers. So from my point of view, I think we need to see that the industrial race is a really good move. Lots of practice of here. I'm sure TFL supports big scheme. We've got 3 people who joined last year, 3 more are joining this year. It's going to be a huge game changer about in-place architecture, because currently, whether we like it or not, there is an reason we get fund us, and that's why we get into architecture. If we would not be here, and the apprenticeship scheme, in my view, would be a game changer in the way we approach architecture, the way we teach architecture, the way we include architects in the conversation. So that's for me is a big thing. Will really big.
Huge list of like things that like can be done, like the tons of opportunities, like the planning in the office and not only, but I'll touch upon few which I think are like key in the industry. The first one is like designing for diversity. The topic started like this year in line with like celebration for our diversity week in the office, and I personally felt like I don't know enough about it, but like actually that's the starting point, getting familiar about it, and then learning to be able to design for diversity, to be able to like actually truly say that you're designing inclusive spaces. I'm not sure whether that's something that has to be like simply to the design access statement and like be part of it and enforce, so people think more about it. Think about, as Sophia was mentioning about the ultrasound, maybe think it's more comforting women or like pregnant women, like, so think like having it at the back of your mind and designing with it on a daily basis, I think is something that we all should do. And like all the tech companies have already embraced it, like they have all sorts of like different spaces within their offices, like they've completely like given up on the cubicle one, and they truly know that this is how they like attract more diverse like employees and respectively like creating a more inclusive environment. A second one is how do these high-level profile opportunities, which I mentioned earlier, they're truly given non-biased. So how everyone is having the same objectives and the same kind of like level of opportunity to grow within their career, because this is something that, like, as I mentioned, if you're not given the opportunity, you're like already a step behind. So like building the relationship within your team to be able and like proving yourself to be able to grow, that's something that like is extremely valuable. And the final one is how do we promote women in education? So as Rupali said, like about the making education more accessible for architecture, but also just purely on statistics, like there is like 29% of women qualified versus like men within the profession. While like surprisingly, at the start of the architectural education, there are more women themselves. So how do we break that? How do we like encourage? And the conversation needs to start at the very start of the academia, rather than like when you go in practice and you actually see that the architecture education was something that was like more extraordinary and was a 50-50 split, but you go within the profession and you see you're like by gender a minority. So I do think these are 3 key points that needs to be embraced on a personal, professional, and like a wider industry.
Good.
I think with these kind of programs like mentoring and just being more involved in these kind of events and hearing all these amazing stories and amazing women will make a change slowly, but firmly it will make a change. So just if we could just if we could raise the awareness of all the diversity, and like I shared today my story and everyone here shared their story, I think there's many more women and men anyone that can relate to it, and it's not just about work, it's also about life, and having a mentor would definitely help in that, but also having any kind of group sessions or being part of the talks we have in the evening. So I would say that would slowly make the changes. I don't know if we could make any radical changes that would happen right now, but with more events and more social.
Thank you. Can I open it up to, we're ending on a really positive note, so some positivity coming back from the audience would be amazing. So any further, like to build on anything that you've heard in terms of the things that we can be doing? We can start today, we can start tomorrow, we can start next week. So any ideas? I mean, I'm hearing a lot about education as well, so you're getting all those ideas for your role. But I'm happy to bring the mic around if someone is game, otherwise I might just put the mic in your face. It's all about visibility and all these things, right? Oh, yes.
So my husband is a civil servant, and it's notoriously quite a terrible profession right now. They haven't had a pay rise for about 30 years or something, and they're all working for people that they don't like. But what they have is they all work in different departments. So HMRC, the Cabinet Office, and what they do is they all just apply really openly for jobs in all the other departments constantly, and they even have development leadership programs run as a whole that they can all go to and meet people and track, oh, how did you get there? I did this job, and then this job, and then this job. So it's like, it's nuts really, that it's this really backwards world being a civil servant, but they have this amazing kind of freedom of movement. And if you apply for any job, your boss knows, everyone knows, it's all good. So there's also a lot of downsides to it, but that kind of leadership development that they have within it, I think, is potentially an exciting model. Wouldn't that be amazing if we could all just go have lunch with someone who's made it to the top of a massive company or of a smaller company, whatever you want to do.
I love this. Yeah, and I think this builds on Ali's point about this idea of feeling accepted. Like it's accepted that you can it's the norm, and you just go and have these conversations, or you're invited to have these things happen. I think that's part of the value, isn't it? Just not feeling as though it's acceptable to ask for this. So I love what you were saying about that. Who else would come?
Actually, I didn't work with the previous thing. Even in the third sector, we have personal development funds where you can use that in the budget every year for anything. And I have a vested interest in promoting this because I coach women, but then so many women could access so many things like any kind of support, professional support, maybe even therapy, or something that they really need, even just public speaking. So that I don't see it in our industry, but why not? And the third sector, which is, I don't think they have very high salary, very good budgets for these things, but that's offered as a work. Why not our industry? Because it can only help with the design. I mean, if somebody could take an extra course and, you know, be more aware of diversity or other issues which designers need to know and then educate everyone else on the team, it just only benefits everybody. So if there are any owners and company owners or anyone who is a stakeholder who can make decisions and creative personal development funds could be incorporated into like a perk for everyone who's on the team.
I used to use like a warming to the idea, warming to the idea of coaching. So I think for a long time I didn't understand that architects could have coaches. And then I recall I was at women behind the scenes at Wimbledon, we were doing something there, and I was just watching all the athletes. They're obviously having loads of coaches. Andy Murray was lined up with 5 or 6 people completely dedicated to him. And then shortly after that, I was given the opportunity to have Karen as a coach. I couldn't believe it. Okay, well, if Andy Murray can have coaches, so can I. But I think it hasn't been considered something that architects do. It hasn't really been offered up. So have you seen any kind of shifts happening?
No.
No.
Sorry, but still a hard sell. I do know you can create other creative industries which related cities are looking at that. So we are probably it's fine.
So it's working.
Yes, very much sounds. I'd like to my mentee and be like, do you know you can ask stuff?
I work in HR and I think I've been in my company for a year now, and I'm aware like throughout my life I've had to ask for things. And just some people said, oh, why didn't they get this promotion? Why, you know, who did you talk to? Who did you talk? And they're like, oh, I just expected it. And I'm like, you need to ask. And I go around going, what are you looking for? Okay, so you need to disseminate that idea between lots of people. And I think that you know, a lot of men in our profession, they do ask.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not just we're overlooked, but we just have to go, okay, well, what we actually do to ask. So I spend a lot of my time talking to people going, okay, well, what do you want? Okay, so who do you need to like talk to get that idea? Who do you need to spread? Who do you need to communicate these things with? And like, you know, talk to me, I can go talk to somebody else. But you need to go, you can't like be expectant of you're doing a good job and then you get rewarded. No, and it's not just men get rewarded, it's because you don't ask. And it's going, you know, I joined the management team and I wasn't even an associate and I had all these principles. And I went, I think it's really important for my role that I join the management team and I sit in management. They're like, oh. And I'm now sitting there and I feel like sometimes I feel like, whatever, but I have a place at that table because I asked for it. And my global director of HR was like, oh, how did you do that? And I went, I just asked. So I'm really going to. But it takes a lot, and I've only known to do that because of my life situation. But I think that we just need to go, you need to ask.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to find that person who's going to give you that confidence to find. So I think, yeah, a lot of that is like, we can't always blame systems.
Yeah.
But,
Oh,
yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're probably just not. Yeah, and I mean, I've seen since I joined, like we started having some more junior members on teams during management meetings and marketing meetings, and like just saying, you know, and they're like, wow, how did that happen? So, because yeah, I said we need to get that. We need to. So who wants to do it? You've got to put your hand up. You've got to put your hand up. So, I think we do need to stand up and sometimes a little bit more and just go, oh, I was going to ask, because quite often they're so shocked going off, we just say yes.
Yeah.
Like I do it, yeah. What do you mean it's 2 months? You're asking to imagine. Yes, please. It's a hell of a lot more work. But do you know what it means? I have this amazing insight. It means also the weight of my voice is stronger and I can make those decisions and they're informed decisions. Like that's what I was talking about. Those decisions and those choices are informed. And a lot of times, you know, when you find that information to make those informed decisions, I don't want people making decisions and choices just don't have any idea. And it's putting it somewhere. Like, tell me the evidence, you know, what you're saying. It's like, I got the evidence. Okay, this is, like, I made a decision. Okay, you're going to question it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Find that person to help you to get that.
You go for it. Yes.
Okay, so the thing I wanted to say is, I think that's excellent, but not everybody is brave enough to ask. And even if you say that, they still won't do it. I think there's a second layer to it, which is about responsibility of managers of workplace. And there are directors or managers that you have that will only cherry pick some people and see a future for some people. And there are managers who see a future for everyone. So that changing of that culture is quite fundamental, because you could have a team of a large number of people and you could want to enable everybody. But many people choose to only enable some. And that is a distinct difference. I see it constantly in my job. And I think that that shift, because that's not just about you standing there arguing for what you should have or what you want. It's about changing the way the playing field is set up, so that if there is an opportunity for everybody to have something, then they have the potential to progress. It's quite a different way of thinking about running, I think, an office, anything. And what that does is it creates an investment by people because they can see that they are valued. I think the hierarchies in practices and in many established organisations are what the problem is. You're stuck and you've got nowhere else to go and you can't see anything else. And you feel like you could be on the treadmill forever with no little glimmer of hope. You know, you think, oh, I've got 5 years, I've got 10 years, what are my options? But actually, I think if businesses can start to think about where are those moments of enabling, where are the opportunities for somebody to get a different sort of project, work with a different kind of team, could you put them forward for something? How could they work with somebody else? That actually is a fundamental part of career progression, that we put no responsibility on directors. Nobody's sitting there telling them to change their attitude. We always sit here and reflect, oh, we've got to be noisier, we've got to do this, I'm going to build my confidence. Actually, I'm sick of that. You know, actually turn it the other way and say there's something wrong with the way selection processes work. And I think making a much more spread and valued support system for each and every member of staff means that the whole thing's going to go better. It's like it builds something that is an energy that you come and benefit from as everybody. So I'm not disputing what you're saying because I agree.
But I think that, you have to go and say, help.
Yeah, but I also think managers need to provide the opportunities for people who are never going to say it. And I think there's something else in changing that sort of established structure of how promotion works. And it's very DNA. And the thing that women are good at is sitting in a meeting and saying, no, I don't like that. I don't want to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I mean, men will just keep doing it because they think they've got to do that for them to do it. But we're quite good at just sitting there and saying, I don't think that's a good idea. Let's try it another way. And I think the very DNA of challenging those quite systemic structures is probably part of how we could get more positive change in the future. I mean, maybe that sounds a bit abstract. Maybe I'm a bit tired, sorry. I think you know where I'm going with it. It's about equal opportunities from a top level, not the bottom one.
That's one of the reasons why I stepped into wanting to transform leadership, because I've figured out that really leadership is where a lot of the decisions are made, obviously. But in terms of if we can really help leaders, then that's just going to really pull everybody else up as well. But I also think this builds on your point, Desi, in terms of if you don't necessarily feel like you have an opportunity to really connect with your line manager or someone who isn't your line manager who you would like to be your line manager, and there isn't those informal opportunities to connect and really develop a relationship, which makes it easier to have the hand up moment. I think that it's kind of all building on each other. Yeah.
Highlighting. I think the solution has to be a combination of things. There is an element of being from the woman and from the bottom up, but there is an element of it which is about changing the setting where you are working within. Because I feel that putting all the responsibility on a woman needing to speak up to be recognized can also come with the feeling that you actually didn't really deserve it, and it can influence how you feel about what you've achieved, because you can think that you've achieved only because you've spoken up, not because you actually deserved it. Whereas I can't believe that 90% of men sitting in the boardroom all have asked for it. They haven't. 70% of them have just been recognized. And I believe that women have the same right to be recognized in the same way. And I think part of it may be about changing the way management is set up, changing the culture within organizations who are very oriented in the profession, and managers who continue that system and do a lot of women wash and put a lot of policies that are for increasing diversity and gender pay gap. But in reality, the data does not really quite show that. It shows that, unfortunately, for the 10 major firms in architecture in this country, the pay gap between genders has in fact increased in the last 2 years. And that is a fact. And that is not because there's less women working hard, or that's because less women speaking out. That's because the managers, or majority of men, have taken those decisions. So I think there's an element of accepting and understanding the context where a woman in architecture is working within. So that in order that a woman doesn't pull the responsibility of changing the world upon herself, in my perspective, because not everything, unfortunately, depends on a person or an individual alone, because the system does exist around us, and that system needs to be recognized. Otherwise, the feelings or the experience of traveling through that system over the grades and over the years may be quite daunting for a woman. And so I do believe that this needs to be highlighted. I think the solutions to make it a little bit more positive, I think it's a combination of things. It's a combination of speaking up, it's a combination of changing the system, whether it's as in the moment you speak up or where you speak up, the actions you take through mentoring programs, which are very effective to address all these issues, or even just when a woman reaches a more decision-making position, actually taking the actions can really change those cultures around us. Sure.
One last thing to say to that, and an opportunity that we all have as connections, either whether it's here on the internet, whether it's Instagram, or whether in the office. And I think we now have an opportunity as individuals to be our best selves with connections and cheerleaders and supporters around us. And I think we're so much better placed because I think women, it's a thread of this has been about being unheard, but with each other we can be heard more so, and we can bring more strength to an office rather than being an unknown perhaps, or if that's the way that we're feeling. So I just think connection, support and cheerleaders, maybe that's really basic, but to change infrastructure it's going to take years. But if we are bringing our best out to the office every day, I think that's just a big win in itself.
Great, I think if you can say about the full men, I want that. This is your chance to advance.
I mean, I think get more men. I think that's part of the problem as well, because it's all well and good, as I said, like cheerleading and we're pushing each other on, but if these conversations don't get heard outside of this room, change doesn't really happen, because and I don't know, with someone that Dessislava who's my wife, living together and we're both architects, so like seeing the sort of two sides of the coin is always so painful. because like a lot of the time she does work harder than me, but she doesn't get as recognized. But yeah, I think part of the solution to that is just sort of from personal experience as well. It's sort of I lean more towards the fact that it does need to be a more top-down solution, because in sort of corporate structures or in companies in general, like in my practice, we've been having these conversations for years and years and years, but until sort of like the partners get together and make a definitive move towards it, the needle doesn't move. So it really does have to come down from decision makers, and it's like that in many other things as well, whether it's the fund crisis or diversity issues on everything. And now the question just then becomes, how do we get those people to do the right thing? So, but I guess first, yeah.
I don't know, but we have a rough idea. So in Women in Architecture, we did this UK REAP event, which was absolutely fantastic. So the Real Estate Forum invited us to go up there and do a session, brilliant conversation, and we decided that we would do a set of recommendations for them and a draft of the document, and we talked about what those recommendations would be. And it triggered this thing of, we should actually write to everybody and tell them, you know, if it's an organisation like the Real Estate Forum, we're going to write to them and tell them what we think we could recommend they do to change it as a formal document, put it on our website, send it to them, send them a letter of how we've consulted with the members and this is what we think would be good. Then we thought, we're going to do one, we had a parents event, right? We're going to do one for women who are parenting and what they need is support. And we're going to take that to the RRBA. Now, each one of these moves would give us the opportunity to make recommendations to somebody. We could set out a document which is about asking architectural firms to think about ways or propose ways to enable every member of their staff to do something different in their career. If we start to do stuff like that, or at least providing, you know, a conscience for you to look at it and do it, and I think that strategy, I don't know if it will work for us, but I think it's a good way for us to try and let somebody else know where we think things could change and make, like rather than sort of negative criticisms, like positive ways of saying, could you review, you know, the range of projects you give architects of every level? Are you looking at the rotation of working on different kind of projects? How are you supporting that in structure? I think we could offer really positive ways to reflect on things, to even make people navel gaze at how they're promoting people in the office. But I mean, I think this mode might be useful to us because it's like a formal way that you can use WIA to try to speak to different groups about different problems or support, but I'm just letting that out there because I think it might be one avenue that could work.
The idea of making it as easy as possible to make a start is, oh yeah.
I think that's a really good point to involve people in. I'm part of Women in Lighting Design, and half the mentors of the summer program are male, and they're all senior people for a long time. So they've all been in the business for at least 10 to 20 years. The new people come in, get out the friendly guys, and it works much better because then it comes back to the leadership side of people who are higher in offices, mentor younger students, men and women. And I think in a room like this, it's a Women in Lighting event, half of the people here would be male. So I think that's a very big point that you made about involving men in women's courses, and they're happy, of course, to do it because they appreciate, as we all do, each other. It's like you said about community and connections, and all that. And also take what you do to universities. You all have amazing stories. Take them to universities, get involved with colleges, and then women will stay in their profession because they'll realise the support structure.
I never had support structure when I was at university. Incredible struggle. I think if I'd seen this, it would have been a very different story. It's also yeah, exactly. The starts at 4 years old.
I've been raised to always think that I could do anything forever, like since I was a kid. So, and I went to all female schools, so I never really had the comparison with that. So I've always grown up to think that I could do whatever I wanted. I got to work, and I still thought that I could do whatever I wanted. So I kind of pushed my way through whatever I wanted, and I've always found myself, obviously. We women are generally quite good at saying, "Oh, we're lucky." I was really lucky to find myself in this position, but it's not. We've worked ourselves to find us where we want to be. Some of us have different personalities. I find myself, I project that confidence to be wherever I want to be. I don't think it is that much in reality, but I do predict it. I find myself in another meeting where I'm the only woman, probably the youngest person, and I've been there since I was a part two when I started working in this country. And it's about that confidence that I was brought up to think that I could do whatever I wanted. And I've never really compared myself to a man because I'm a woman. I have never thought about that before until I started working, until like other people around me started telling me that that was an issue. So I think it's about how we bring up ourselves to be the women we are in the future. It's about how we're brought up as well. So I think it's more important to how we teach our kids to be, how we, women and men are, you can do whatever you want. You have to also understand that as a woman, you have certain strengths and certain weaknesses, and as a man, you have certain strengths and certain weaknesses, and they're different, and it doesn't matter. It's about harnessing those, as you were saying earlier, and using that to be who you want to be. That's where we want to be in the future. We're at a point where it doesn't really matter where you are. What matters is what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and how you play with those to be where you want to be.
One of my directors at the they're very told and mentors. So yeah. And I'm wondering whether it's sort of bringing the sort of mentors in practice as well, targeting the top. Hierarchy rather than just
Trying to be on that, yeah.
it's just a question.
Yeah. It's so true. And actually, in the last 3 years or so, since I've stepped outside of my coaching practice and set up my own thing, I realised I needed to do all this personal development in order to be an entrepreneur. It's quite different to being just an architect. But I've realised that actually there's so many really successful people out there, male and female, who really understand this idea of lifelong learning and seek out mentors. And they don't necessarily need to be part of the program, but they've actually gone and it requires the generosity of individuals clearly, but they've gone and sought out an individual and said, I like this about you, I want to learn this from you, and I won't take up much of your time, but if it can just be every now and then or something along those lines. And yes, it requires bravery to ask, but I think you'll be surprised that when you do ask somebody and you flatter them first, obviously, that you actually, yes, being part of a program is one thing, but seeking out individuals to say, look, there's this one thing you do and just love to be able to do. Can I just, observe that, or can we chat about that, or whatever it is? And I think sometimes we can make mentoring into a very big thing, but actually sometimes it can be just those moments with somebody or with a group where you can really just absorb something in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise done. So I think part of what we're trying to do in this program is going to break the myths around mentoring, make it more accessible. And I definitely agree with getting involved in leaders and sorting out the leaders. Something that's a great place to start. Thank you so much for all your energy and your patience. Now let's go and have another drink. For doing all of your work in this program. something you would like to say, thank you so much for the call and go and enjoy yourselves now.